The world of the Elder Scrolls is a high fantasy setting. There's blissful afterlives you can look forward to after your death, and even beings considered dark, evil gods can be reasoned with. And on top of that, there's funny talking cat people who all started out as kittens, and that's funny because even the most deadly Khajiit warrior looked like this at one point. What I'm trying to illustrate here is that the world we're presented with in the Elder Scrolls is not a total grim, dark fairy tale. In fact, it's overall pretty positive. But don't let that fool you. This is no children's story. Now, while I said the princes, these dark gods, are capable of reason, they are still considered evil for a good reason, and still inhabit and rule over a dimension comprised of smaller dimensions that hang over an infinite void. Now, the series is pretty upfront with its depiction of its Daedra. The princes can be funny and charming or comically evil. The lesser Daedra are just the same, if not even more so. But that's what makes the moments when you're reminded of just what they are stick out even more. Let's look at Vaermina, the Prince of Dreams, one of the lesser discussed princes by fans. She doesn't have the entertaining dialogue of Sheogorath or the grand moments of Mehrunes Dagon, but she's extremely powerful in ways you might not even realize. In truth, she's more similar to Hermaeus Mora than any other prince. As I said, she lords over dreams and nightmares. Yes, while outside of exceptional events like the Oblivion Crisis or cultists directly messing with people, most mortals of Mundus are directly out of the grasp of Daedric forces. This is except for Vaermina, because she owns your dreams. She makes your nightmares, and everyone who sleeps is vulnerable to her. Besides, dreams hold a special place in the Elder Scrolls, as I've explained before in videos. From small-scale things like Dagothar's dreamers to large, complex ideas like all of reality being the dream of a greater being, a godhead. The power of dreams are prominent in the series, and thanks to Oblivion, we can see firsthand the power of Vaermina. In Vaermina's Oblivion quest, the hero of Kavachi is tasked with getting an artifact that was stolen from her by a mage named Arkved, the Orb of Dreams. But by the time you arrive at his tower, it's already been turned into this non-Euclidean hellscape. You haven't entered Oblivion, no. This is still very much Mundus. This is the power of dreams. From a lore perspective, this is pretty spooky. But even more so from a game perspective. This mission genuinely creeped me out. For one, it's just well made. But this is Oblivion we're talking about. It's bright, it's colorful, it's very, very, very often goofy. And then suddenly, it's halted when you're met with this. After you stumble through the waking dream of his tower, you'll find Arkved sleeping soundly in his room. His dreams were empowered by the orb, allowing him to warp reality to the extent that you just saw. He won't wake up even if you attack him. He just lays there dreaming the very room around you. He's likely been able to see us or sense us the entire time. So kill him or leave him, because either way you won't get any more information out of him. But speaking of princes who can warp reality, I briefly mentioned Hermaeus Mora. His horror is a lot more outward in appearance, taking obvious notes from H.P. Lovecraft's work. But that isn't to say the rest of the series isn't influenced by H.P. Lovecraft, just more so, Hermaeus Mora is the culmination of that. His realm is the bottom of an empty ocean, the seafloor of a body of water that may have never existed, yet it's surrounded by oceans of black sludge. The wreckage of boats and ships can be found dotting the landscape, making you really wonder if this place was at one time covered by water. But when was that, and who sailed these waters of oblivion? On the other half of his realm, far from the green, wispy air, is a more colorful region, the Chroma Incognito, a place filled with galaxy-like clusters of stars. These colors out of space seem to flow like water, yet just hang in the sky. All across this realm, though, can be found endless libraries of forbidden knowledge, secrets that could easily destroy a person's mind, and those who succumb to this fate are likely to end up as one of the hushed, mindless monsters whose pursuit of knowledge left them as they are now. But out of all of Mora's big boy libraries, the biggest boy of them all is the infinite Panopticon. Few beings have ever stepped foot in this place, and even fewer mortals. This is basically the heart of the realm. Now journey far enough past the hushed, past a lot of fish, and past the seekers, you'll start to notice these dotting the walls. Now, when I was first playing through ESO Necrom, this stood out to me. A lot of things in ESO do, for better or for worse. Maybe I'm just a little baby, but there was something really off-putting about these when I saw them. You're deep in the heart of the realm, you're going through layers of memories of an abstract god, and suddenly you're met with these abnormally large, but certainly humanoid, shriveled, petrified bodies emerging from these coral-like structures with faces of terror. It's not exactly their appearance that freaked me out. If that was the case, I would never even be able to play Fallout. No, it was their placement. What were they doing here, and who were they? We're deep in the bowels of Apocrypha. I would expect more abstract ideas, concepts, things that don't make any sense, but I met with just petrified people. Are these the bodies of people who journeyed through the infinite panopticon before? But they're too large. They're not the size of a person in the Elder Scrolls. They're certainly not giants either. And if they were to fall to the forces of the infinite panopticon, would they not just become the Hushed or something else? Or just die? Why are they blooming out of coral? Why do some of them have blindfolds on? Why are they screaming in terror? Now, I could move on to a very related topic from ESO Necrom, but that would be a very large spoiler. And they left us on a major cliffhanger, so there's not much to talk about it yet. But let's just say it was very unnerving to hear a character like Hermaeus Mora scared. But speaking of abnormally large bodies, let's take a step back into Fargrave and look at a similar case of unknown remains. The Gargantuans of Fargrave. These massive skeletons can be seen all around this small realm. The Gargantuans are, well, gargantuan. They could swallow a giant from Skyrim with ease. So what's so spooky scary about these skeletons? Well, it's because of a few things. Nobody really knows anything about these beings. None of the mortal or Daedric inhabitants know what they were or why they're here. All they have is a few legends, and another reason is these are not Daedra, and they are not mortal. They're obviously not Daedra because they're dead. The Dremora, the Daedra, they don't die, they reform when they're killed. Sometimes it takes a while, depending on how hard you beat them, but they'll always come back. And they're obviously not mortal because I shouldn't even have to explain why they're clearly not from Mundus. So what are these things? Well, the only beings who fit this description are, well, the Aedra. Non-mortal beings who can die. It kind of fits the bill, but at the same time, one of the few things people can say about these monolithic bodies is it's believed at some point they used to carry Fargrave on their shoulders. They'd walk through Oblivion and the Void carrying this realm, moving it from place to place, which certainly doesn't fit the activities of an Aedra. So what are these things, and how can you walk through the Void? Now, moving on from Oblivion into Mundus, we have some horrors beyond your comprehension to look at. The many races of Tamriel hold many abilities, some of which I am still not sure if I'm meant to take literally or not. I can understand Adrenaline Rush, but can every Imperial actually just make things calm down? Or is that just meant to show how diplomacy is considered a virtue in Imperial society, so most Imperials are just good at that? I don't know. Anyway, there's an important ability possessed by all Bosmer that you don't hear about much. This ability is called the Wild Hunt. The Wild Hunt is something Bosmer tend not to tell people outside of Valenwood. It's considered a sin and therefore is only used in times of extreme desperation or in times of extreme revenge. While many people in lore and also in the community have a faint idea that the Bosmer have some sort of shape-shifting abilities, the Wild Hunt is far more and far worse than simply turning into animals. When the Wild Hunt begins, a horde of Bosmer change into these monsters, forming into a wave of unstoppable carnage. They become mindless killing machines and leave nothing left in their wake. And when they run out of things to destroy, they will turn on each other till there's nothing left, and the few that might remain scatter to the forests. To fully illustrate the horror on display here, I will have my friend read a chunk of the UESP entry verbatim.
These shapeshifters are stripped of their flesh from their bone instantaneously, and turn into creatures that defy all attempts to identify them. Some may not even turn into creatures at all, and instead turn into great writhing tongues, unfettered by lips or teeth, and can take on a gaseous form which makes them impossible to contain without the aid of magic. There's even some suggestion that they can take on the form of water or waves of blood. The forms they take are not static, however, as they appear like a serpent one moment and shift into another creature the next moment. When Bosmer invoke the Wild Hunt, it causes a change in wild animals as well. Beasts typically transform into beings that are part plant and part animal.
Yes, that's right. Every single Bosmer from Faendal to Fargoth has these powers just beneath the surface of their skin. Imagine what an army would look like. An ocean of blood with the sole goal to end anything it can. And in a second, the ocean could just as easily turn into a horde of indescribable horrors akin to the inhabitants of the Nameless City from H.P. Lovecraft. See, I told you it wasn't just Hermaeus Mora. But not only are the Bosmer turned, but like what was said, so are the animals nearby, though it seems their transformations are a bit more predictable. But like I said earlier, only most of these abominations are destroyed by each other. Some do escape and are said to live for a very, very long time. And the transformation is irreversible. These Bosmer are forever stuck like this. Meaning, even though there hasn't been a wild hunt since before the events of Daggerfall, monsters created by the wild hunt are still out there, with nothing to do but roam. And who knows how far they could have traveled in all this time. These monsters very well could be stalking the forests of all of Tamriel by now. There's a million more scary things in the Elder Scrolls I could talk about, and there's a good chance I will in a future video, but I'd like to talk about one more in this video at least. See, there's always been talk about the dimension of the Void throughout the series. Sithis this and Sithis that. But the Markarth DLC of the Dark Heart of Skyrim storyline in ESO actually made the Void really spooky. Not to go over the entire plot, but the story involves a lot of experimenting with the Void. Things happen in this DLC that there's not a lot of lore explanation for because it's never happened before, you know? Plot-wise, this was all untreaded ground, but during these experiments with the Void, shades were created. These are or were people corrupted to the core by the Void. You actually speak with someone who was turned and it's not pleasant. They're in pain. They talk about darkness within them, and once you get the information you need, all they'll say is, I'm fading away. Maybe I'm being a little too melodramatic, but these things are freaky. There's the obvious horror on display, they look spooky enough, but I think it's the idea that these are not naturally occurring beings like Daedra, or even just a ghost. But these are not monsters summoned from the Void either. These are just experiments gone wrong. These were people, but now they're beings without a precedent. They have no home realm like other supernatural beings, but Mundus. But they very clearly aren't fit to exist in the mortal world anymore. And with that, the video is over. You should go sub to my friend's channel here if you like spooky things, and follow my social media where I post my arts, because I post a lot of them. Stuff that you do not see on YouTube, even, you know, with the YouTube shorts. And hey, if there's something else that's pretty spooky in the Elder Scrolls that you think I should go ahead and talk about, go ahead and tell me then. And maybe I'll shout you out in a future video, or maybe I'll never make a part 2 to this ever. Who knows?